Hey everyone, Wayne here. Today we're going to do an overview and tutorial of the game Return to the Rock, Corregidor, 1945. I've already done an unboxing or unbagging in this case for it. So you can go ahead and check that out if you want to kind of see each of the components. But otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a general overview of the game, and then I'm going to go through each kind of segment of the game and how to play it. We're not going to cover every single rule, but we are going to be able to, at least you're going to get a really good idea how the game works. And you should be able to start playing it based on my tutorial, plus maybe a read through of the rule book at least once, kind of become familiar on your own with the rules. So let's kind of start with a broad overview. So this game, like I said, it is Return to the Rock, Corregidor, 1945. What this does is it simulates the invasion of the island of Corregidor, part of the Philippines, invasion of the Philippines, the liberation of the Philippines in 1945, Pacific Theater of World War II. So the game begins on February 16th, 1945. You can see it runs here for 7 turns. So in this game, designed by Michael Rinella, it is an area impulse game. What that means is you can see it's an area map of the island. And by the way, I have everything set up. I don't have the markers, the counters out for more of the optional rules. I'm just going to cover the base rules for the game, because the optional rules are things that add a little chrome. They're nice to have, but they're not essential to learning the basics of the game and how to play it. So, like I said, I have the initial setup here. The Japanese forces, you start off with the pillboxes on the island. The Americans are ready to go. And then you have a Japanese hidden units box filled with the rest of the Japanese units. Because of that, the first turn, you're going to have basically the U.S. invading from both seaborne invasion boxes and airborne invasion boxes. If you don't know a whole lot about the battle, basically the U.S. did a 2-front invasion. They landed troops on topside, which was unexpected by the Japanese. They did not expect the Americans to do that. At the same time, obviously, did more of a traditional seaborne invasion here at Black Beach. Now I talked about it being area impulse. What that means is, as you can see, like I said, the map is divided up into different areas. You activate area impulse, means you're activating each area to do whatever action you're going to do. Those actions could be an assault, a bombardment, infiltration, or you may just pass. Those 3, the assault, anyone can do, American and Japanese. Bombardment is American only. Infiltration is Japanese only. And there are some intricacies to the rules on when you can do certain things. We'll get into that. So starting off, it's going to be, for example, let's say we're at turn 1 here, and we have our impulse 1, and you can see on the marker, it's an American flag. That means the United States have the first impulse. So in a game, they're going to go ahead and start off, and in the rules, they're going to go ahead and launch their airborne invasion with these top counters, this top wave can land on top side. You have a chart you roll on to see what happens. You go ahead and start landing your troops, and then you're going to start seeing if you can keep your impulse. The way the impulse system works is you start off with the first one is basically free, and then as you start taking actions, you do impulse 1, basically no big deal, you just do it. Impulse 2, okay, now once you get to there, you have to start rolling. You have to start rolling, and it's called momentum. And to keep conducting impulses, you have to roll better and better. And if you roll low, and I'll show this a little more detail later, then you're going to lose your impulse, and it's going to switch over. And then now it's the Japanese turn, and they get the first impulse. And it goes back and forth like that until you've activated the different units, different boxes, and you really have no other actions left you either want to take or can take. And then it moves on to, from the day phase to the night phase. You do an entire night phase, and then from there, you go on end phase, and then it'll be the next day during the day. So, I think it's a good broad overview. I'm going to get down to each of the details of what each activation does, how the impulse system works exactly. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a general idea of how the game works. So as you're getting your units, say the Americans, as they're getting their units landed on Black Beach, or they have them landing on topside, being dropped there, you're going to start spreading out. You're going to want to capture these victory point areas. You can see they're in red, so they're super easy to spot. And there's no hidden information in the game. That's what makes it really good solitaire. 2 things. One, there's no hidden information. Even though it says Japanese hidden units, that just means that they're not on the map yet. But also because the impulse system, the way that you never know how many impulses you're going to get in a row before it switches to the other side, those 2 factors make it really friendly for solitaire. So as U.S., invades Black Beach, lands on topside, they're going to start spreading out, trying to capture these victory point areas. They have to keep up the victory points on the victory point track here, because if at any point a turn ends and the United States doesn't have as many victory points as the turn it is, they lose automatically to the Japanese. So, although there's no real hope, let's say, of the Japanese holding off the American forces overall, right? They were never going to win this battle. This game makes it competitive because it keeps the Americans on a timer. You have to achieve your objectives fast enough, get these victory points, catch these different areas, or capture, take control of them. And that way, you're actually able to keep up. And if you don't, you will lose. All right, I wanted to dive into the impulse aspect of the game first, because that's what really drives this game. That's what makes this game different from an I Go, You Go, or a chit pull, or any of the other games, traditional war game mechanics. So this system, this impulse system, has been around for a while. Their kind of unique aspect to this one, though, is that he has implemented what's called momentum. So let me describe for this game right here, Corregidor, how it works. Say we're starting at the beginning of the game, and I'm not going to go into actually on the board here, other than to show you, just to basically demonstrate here. So say it's the very first turn. We're at turn 1. It's a day phase. And first impulse. U.S. gets the first impulse during every day phase. Now, I mentioned this in the overview. The U.S., let's say, he says, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my airborne invasion box. And he goes ahead, and we'll cover that later. He goes and lands multiple units, or he lands one unit. If it's the very first, he gets to land multiple. But very first impulse of the game, he gets to land the entire first wave. After that, it's only one at a time. And say he lands his waves, gets everything out there. Okay, cool. All right. Impulse is now done. He had activated the airborne invasion box with an assault impulse as his first impulse. Now, that first one was free. Basically free. You get to move it down to here. So as soon as I say, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Before I pick, I go ahead and move it down. Conduct my first impulse. All right, so I'm finished with the first impulse. As the U.S. player, I'm thinking, yeah, I got a lot more I want to do here. So before I even pick my impulse, before I say I'm going to do an assault, I'm going to do bombardment, or I'm going to pass, which would obviously, now you don't have to worry about them making a roll there. You go ahead and you would roll 1d6, and you can hopefully see right here, there's a little pip, a 1. And then down here you can see there's a 1 and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, and you get whatever I'm going, right? So you go ahead and you give her a roll, a 1. That was a bad roll for the Americans, because that means because I rolled a 1 and that pip is on there, I now lose momentum. And it would go back to 1, and it would flip it over, and now it's the Japanese impulse, and now they get to go. And now they would go, they would do whatever they'd move it down. They would probably start, activate their, say, Japanese hidden units box, start bringing some units on the map. They can do one at a time per impulse. Okay, now they want to go. I have a red die for them. Now they're going to go, and they want to keep momentum, and that's what it's called. And that's where the game really shines when it comes to the solitaires. You don't know, are they going to keep their momentum? So they go ahead and they're going to roll. Actually rolled a 1, so they lose momentum. But say we had rolled a 3. Well, that's above a 1, so they would keep momentum. So now you go ahead and move the box down, and now they can conduct their second impulse. Now say they've done their thing, and they still got more they want to do. They want to bring more units on the map. They want to go ahead and, build up a good defensive force to stop the Americans. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to try to do another one of these impulses. They're going to keep momentum. So go ahead and they roll again. A 2. Well, they would fail because a 1 and a 2. So you notice how the number went up. And it keeps going like that, higher and higher, until at the very end, when you get to the impulse number 6, you have to roll a 6 each time. Now, technically, if they keep rolling a 6, they could keep going. Now, it's rare, but I've had it happen once or twice where, they got to do all these impulses, so they maintain momentum, and eventually they even got here, and they still get to do 1 or 2 more before finally they rolled different, anything lower than a 6. So, and that's where you never know. Each back and forth, right? It's going to be a lot of back and forth. You may get to go, once, twice, 3 times, but once you start getting into 4 and 5, the odds are you're gonna roll one of these lower dice, but you may not, and that's where you never know. And when you're doing your plan, say the Americans, how many units do I start landing for the invasion, and how many times do I wait and say, maybe, you know what, I'm gonna actually try to do an assault and actually start taking over areas because I don't know if I'm gonna maintain momentum. And once I lose it, the Japanese are probably gonna get some turns in. And that is how the impulse works, along with momentum. All right, we've covered impulses. Now let's imagine that is the Americans have momentum right now, their impulse. They declare a assault impulse, and they activate Black Beach here. They've landed their soldiers. Their soldiers are on their fresh side, which now that we are looking at combat, just show you guys, there's a fresh side and there's a spent side. Basically, the fresh side is going to be where it's their front, no stripe. The spent side is the back, where there's a stripe across it. When a unit is activated, odds are it's probably going to be fresh at the start of an impulse, although if it had landed or part of the invasion, you didn't roll well enough, because you do roll on invasion tables, it may land, or it may even be eliminated, but it may land spent. Otherwise, if it's fresh, that's when you can go ahead and you can attack with it, you can move with it, whatever you want to do. Once it's completed its action, it's going to be flipped over to spent. All right, so we have all fresh units here. We've activated an assault impulse, Black Beach we pick. And we want to invade, and we want Black Beach. We're going to go ahead and we want to get middle side here. So what we're doing, we activate Black Beach for an assault impulse. We start moving our units. Now, technically, an assault impulse also involves things like movement. So say we had a couple other units here. We could theoretically, we activate Black Beach for movement, or for assault impulse. You can go ahead and start moving units. Say we move this American infantry into middle side, another one into middle side, this machine gun into middle side, and then we're like, oh, that's enough for there. I'm going to move this infantry here to Fort Mills, and this one I'm going to leave right here. Now, I wouldn't recommend that because the infantry's going to have to fight that pillbox, and that's not going to be a good battle for him. So, wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Maybe you'd send in more. It's up to you. Or you could say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move him down to this empty area, which, when you do that, as the Americans, and you can either have all the markers out here as to start with, Japanese flag, or what I like to do is I leave the board blank so it's a little easier to look at, and you go ahead and as you take over an area, you gain control of it. So I'll jump into that in a second here. So let's go ahead and do our battle here. So we went ahead, we activated Black Beach, we moved these 3 American units, each one at a time, movements conducted, and we moved them into middle side here. Now, because we entered a area that was not contested, and what that means is if an area, say right here, Black Beach, there's nobody in there, and we land our unit, it is now controlled by the Americans. Now, say there had been a Japanese unit there when we landed. We wouldn't control it, not yet. Instead, it would be considered contested. And then, obviously, if we eliminate them, force them to retreat, then we would take control of it. Or say they were there and we weren't yet, then they would be in control of it. So areas every area starts off controlled by the Japanese. That's why as the American units land, I go ahead and just switch over and start placing the American markers down to show that they control the area. So, all right. So we've done our invasion. We have assault impulse. We've moved our units here to middle side. Now, because it was not contested, so it was a Japanese controlled area, combat is mandatory. Otherwise, you could choose. If it was contested, you could say, all right, I'm not going to attack with them. I'm just going to move them in there. But since combat is mandatory, we're going to go ahead and conduct a combat. Combat is pretty simple. It seems complicated at first, but it's really not. What you do as the attacker is you choose a lead attack unit. And as pretty much, from the beginning of war game history, you're going to see the 3 numbers on the bottom are attack, defense, and movement factors. So you go ahead and pick probably your strongest, is probably what you want to do, as your lead attack unit. And then the defender is going to pick their lead defending unit. In this case, they're also going to pick their strongest unit here. So our 4-5-4 infantry and their 4-4-4 infantry, we're going to pick as lead attacker and lead defender. Then you start looking at some of the modifiers. It's not overly complicated. So for the Americans, you start off with whatever your lead attacker is, you look at their attack factor, so it's 4. And then for every unit supporting each additional unit in the attack, which in this case we added 2 more, it's +1 for each one. So at 4 +1 +1, total of 6. And then you look at a combined arm bonus. If there's at least 3 different types of units, you get a combined arm bonus. In this case, we have an infantry and we have a machine gun. That's only 2, so we're no combined arms bonus. But say we'd had this tank, which he technically couldn't move there because black solid line, restricted movement. He could not do that. Say he'd come from here and he'd moved over there, or they'd move together. Or it was just, say it was one of these artillery units he had moved with. That would be 3 different types. It would get a combined arms bonus of another +1. But we do not have that right now. So you look at it, and then one more thing is that during the day, which it is the day turn, day phase, I should say, the Americans get a +1 for attacking during the day and +1 for defending during the day. There's no modifier for the Japanese at night. The Americans just don't get that +1. So in total, you look at it, we have a 4 supporting units, 5, 6, and then it's daytime, so 7. So total of 7. And that's our base attack total. Now we go ahead, and defense is also just as simple. Look at your leading defense unit, which is him with his 4 defense. And then we go ahead and look for any fresh units that are assisting and defending, which we're going to use that machine gun. That's a +1. Again, you don't use the actual total, you use just additional units, add a +1. So that 4 + 1 becomes a 5. And then you look at that number down here. You can see there's a 17 and a +2. 17 is the number of the area. 16, 22, whatever. Every area is numbered. The bottom number is where you add that. That is the terrain effect modifier. So we're at a 4 +1 +2. So total of 7. No other modifiers. So we had 4, 5, 6, 7. Total of 7. And he's at 7 as well. So it's break even on that. So it's 7 and 7. Those are the attack total and the defense total. And what you do is you roll 2 dice for each side. I do it color coded like this. And what you do is you go ahead, and I'm not gonna roll it. Well, maybe I will. Let's just do that. All right, cool. So go ahead and add them up. Doesn't look good for the attacker here. So say this is what we got here on our roll. Like I said, we're at 4, 5, 6, and then it's attacking during the day. That's 7. And they're at 7 as well. So go ahead and add up. 7, 8, 9, 10, 7, 11. So they had 1 more than us. What that means is our attack was repulsed. In a repulse, or being repulsed, our lead attacking unit, which we had declared was this infantry, he would be eliminated, so he'd be taken and placed in the eliminated box. The rest of our units would be flipped to spent, and they would retreat back to Black Beach. And then there would be no effect on the defenders here. They would just stand strong. Now, let's say it was a stalemate. So they rolled the exact same. They had 7, we had 7, +3, +3, so 10 versus 10. That would be a stalemate. In a stalemate, none of the units are going to be eliminated. They're flipped over to their spent side. However, they can stay in that area. They do not have to retreat. Basically, it's like, yep, they got to move in. However, they're not repulsed. They're just, didn't cause any damage, but they also weren't destroyed, thankfully. Now, say we had rolled, let's do it like this. Here we go. So now 7 + 3 is 10. 7 + 7 is 14. Now the attacker exceeded the defender. So the attack total exceeded the defense total by 4. Those 4 are converted into attrition points. The defender has to suffer attrition points. Now there's a chart that tells you what each of those things does, how many attrition points each action does. Basically what it is things like flipping a fresh unit to spent, so flipping it over, retreating a unit, eliminating a unit. So with 4 attrition points, it'd be something like, say, the first attrition point always has to affect the lead defender. So we'd say 1, flip them over from fresh to spent. That's 1 attrition point. So we still have 3 left. We can go ahead and flip this machine gun over from fresh to spent. That uses up 1 more. So now there's 2 attrition points left we have to affect. Now we could retreat both of these guys. Retreat is 1 attrition point. So for the last 2 to spend, we might say, all right, let's just retreat both these guys up to the hospital. And that'd be 2 satisfy all the requirements for attrition points. Or we might say, you know what, I don't want to give up middle side. The Japanese player says, no, I want to keep middle side. So what I'll at least keep it contested. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and just eliminate this spent unit. That's 2 attrition points. And now that satisfies the rest of them. Now the Americans will be flipped over to spent just because they did conduct a combat. But now the Japanese unit is spent in this area. It's not under American control yet. It's still technically under Japanese control, but it is contested. And then that's combat. All right, now let's look at bombardment. Now that I've explained combat already, bombardment is even simpler. It's very simple. So basically, the American is the only one who can do bombardment impulses. So it'd be the same thing like with that assault impulse I did, where I decided, okay, I activated, Black Beach for assault, and I started moving units, moving. All right, and then I did, mandatory combat or whatever. In this case, it'd be American impulse, and they decided to do a bombardment impulse. Now you have either artillery on the map. You can see mechanized artillery. Here's artillery over here. And you can either use them to bombard an adjacent area or the same area, or you do have naval and air for the Americans that can be used to bombard anywhere on the map. So in this case, let's say we're going to use our naval bombardment. So we've activated, it's our impulse. We do a bombardment impulse as the Americans. We want to go ahead and we're going to bombard middle side before we attack. So say this time, going back in time a little bit, instead of just launching our assault right away, we want to go ahead and soften it up a little bit first. So what we would do, we pick however we're going to bombard. In this case, like I said, we're going to do a naval bombardment, and you can see the number 8 on there. So we go ahead and place it on here, and as the side's bombarding, which it's only the Americans, again, I just want to emphasize that, we pick who we want to basically target. So we're going to go ahead and target that infantry. So I'm going to put them right next to him just to show we're targeting that infantry. Now, the modifier is fairly simple. What you're going to do is you're going to look at, we have ours as our base attack total is going to be 8. That does not change, other than if there's only one Japanese unit, we get a -1. And if there's, I believe it's more than 3 Japanese units, so if they had a whole pile of units here, we'd get a +1. But with just 2 units, it just stays as an 8. Obviously, that shows that, hey, if there's only 1 unit, it's harder to hit them. At the same time, if there's a whole bunch of units, it's going to be easier, you're going to hit somebody, right? So we're targeting the infantry with our 8. Now, for defender, you don't look at their defense factor. That only affects combat. In this case, for bombardment, you're just looking at that terrain effect modifier, that +2. So in this case, we're probably going to do some damage to them because we have an 8 versus their 2. So you go ahead, just like you would, 2 dice. Go ahead and give her a roll. All right, and so you'd say for the attackers, we have 8 plus 9, so a total of 17. Defenders, it was 2 plus 9 to total 11. So +6, or 6 over. So now they have to suffer 6 attrition points, which, just like in combat, the lead defender or the unit that's targeted has to take the first one. Then they can divide it up. In this case, with just 2 units and 6 attrition points, they're both going to be eliminated because it takes 3 to eliminate a unit, and there's no other way for them to figure out how to spend them. So our bombardment is actually going to go ahead and eliminate both, which means I'd say we get another impulse. We can go ahead and, do Black Beach assault impulse, move our guys in, and we now take control without having to do another combat there. All right, so you guys have seen the assault impulse, you've seen a bombardment impulse. Now let's look at the infiltration impulse. So, imagining now it was a day phase. The Americans are generally going to be the aggressors during the day, and at night, the Japanese are more likely to be the aggressors. There's no restrictions. The Americans can still assault during the night. They just don't get that day bonus. And the Japanese generally are going to be a little easier on them. And I'll demonstrate. So, pretend now it's the night. It's a night phase. We've had some action over here. The Americans, you can see the American units are spent here on Black Beach. You attacked Fort Mills. The pillbox, the Japanese pillbox is on spent side, and the U.S. infantry here is spent. So the U.S. is basically done in this part of the island here for tonight, because you're not going to be able to get their units back to full strength, to fresh, until the end phase. So, however, the Japanese are not done. So what they're going to do, so assuming they have the impulse, assuming they've rolled right, they're ready to rock and roll, they're going to go ahead and they're going to declare a infiltration impulse. And so what is he going to do? He's going to go ahead and pick this fresh unit of his, and he's going to try to infiltrate Black Beach. Now there's a handy chart and table you can't see up here. It's in the rule book, or it's on the board. You go ahead and you roll on that. Simple 1d6. The only modifier is it's a -1 to the roll if there's any fresh American units. So think that they're more alert. So if this machine gun had been fresh still, it'd be a -1. However, we're going to say they're all spent, so no modifiers. It's a straight d6 roll. Go ahead and roll. Now, what you're doing is you're looking at charts. So it's super simple. If you roll a 1, infiltration has failed. What that means is he moves in, they spot him, and combat is mandatory. So they have to attack. Which, depending, especially since during an infiltration, it's only 1 unit at a time. If you're, infiltrating an area like this where there's multiple defensive units, multiple units here, might hurt a little bit harder. Now, obviously, during defense, the fresh units don't help, but at the same time, maybe you didn't want to attack, right? It's plus, and here's where I'll show you where if you roll better, it's going to help you. So say that was a 1. Pretend we had rolled a 1. That'd be we failed. We're able to move. However, we're not, we have to attack. And then we'll be flipped to our spent side when we're done. Okay, so say we didn't roll a 1. Say like that 5. I had rolled a 5. What that is infiltration succeeds. The unit stays fresh. Not only that, we can conduct a bonsai charge, which doubles the attack factor of the Japanese unit. And that's the key to the infiltration impulse. The Japanese can send units in one at a time, and if you roll well, basically what it is if you roll a 3 or higher, because a 2 means they succeed, they infiltrate, they don't have to fight, but they're flipped to spent, they're done. So if you roll a 3 or higher, so 3, 4, 5, 6, you can conduct an attack with double the attack factor, which, obviously, I'm sure you understand, that's a big bonus. So say I did roll that 5, right? I could send him in, he rolls a 5, means he has an 8 attack factor now, and I might say, yep, I'm going to do my attack. So I'm going to go ahead and attack. This is my lead attack unit, lead defending unit, and boom. And these are spent, so they're not going to be able to assist in the defense. Odds are I'm going to do a whooping on the Americans here. So there's 2 things you look at. One is the Americans. You may want to leave some fresh units for the night phase, just basically to help you out. Not only because they're generally stronger then, so see 5 defensive factor versus when he's spent, it's only a 3. But also understanding that, especially say machine gun or any other unit that's fresh is going to give them a negative on their infiltration. So versus the Japanese, even though you can still conduct attacks, you can conduct assaults during the day, have combat, you're probably going to want to save a lot of your units for the nighttime, the night phase, so you can launch those infiltration assaults. Alright, so I've covered the primary nuts and bolts of the game, from how the impulses work, the turn track, day phase, night phase, kind of what each side can do, what their specialties are. I'll just cover a couple different things and we'll call it a video. So what I'm going to look at are the reorganization phase and the reinforcement phase. It's spelled out here on the sequence of play, but basically what it is the reinforcement phase occurs first, other than on turn 1, then it skips to the day phase. The reorganization phase occurs after the night phase. So what we're going to do is, because we kind of covered kind of a turn 1 scenario here, we're going to do the reorganization phase, the end phase, then the reinforcement phase. So in the reorganization phase, what you're doing, and it starts Japanese, then the American player, you look at that eliminated units box that was up in the corner of the map, top right corner. When you look at that, you go ahead and you look at your units that are in there, and what you're seeing, and I think I pointed this out before, but if not, I will point it out right now. You can see we have, say, these units on the left-hand side, common infantry units. They have no special letters in the top right corner. American units just has a color there. However, if you look to the Japanese pillbox, there's an S, and the American armor unit here, there's an S as well. That means that those are special units that have kind of the special rules that are activated during the reinforcement phase. So let me explain. So during the reorganization phase, you can select out of the eliminated units box any non-S unit. So basically during reorganization, just ignore these. Ignore any unit with an S on it. What you're going to want to do, say, grab a couple units here. The Americans and the Japanese, they have their box, and the Japanese do it first. You look at your units that are not special, do not have the S in the corner, and you say, all right, yep, I want to definitely put these back in play. Now, what you can do is you can do that. So you can select any one of your non-S units. So obviously say, well, out of these 2, this one's stronger, so I want to select him. You can go ahead, you can place him in a numbered area on the map that's friendly controlled and has a friendly unit. So boom, he's right on the map. You don't have to do him as reinforcements. Go and place right on the map. Or if you're the Japanese, you can place him in the hidden units box. However, if you do that, so say I'm like, yep, I want to put him on the map, Boom, put him down here. Yeah, let's put him right there. Or let's put him up on the Malinta Hill here. Let's buff those defenses up. All right, now you have to eliminate from play, not keeping the eliminate units box, but eliminate from play, so remove from play, another non-S Japanese unit. So I've reinforced one on the map. I'm going to go ahead, reorganize one onto the map. Go ahead and take this other one, throw it away, throw it in the trash. Well, maybe not in the trash, but get him off the board. He is done. And in this way, you're going to start seeing, as the turns go by, fewer and fewer units being able to be reorganized or reinforced. So, all right, so that was the reorganization. Those are the non-S units. You go ahead and place them on there, but for every one you put on the map, you got to go ahead and chuck another one. So what you usually find yourself doing is you look and you say, who's more powerful? Now, in this situation, you can see American units are the same. So it's like, okay, well, whatever. Just put him out. He gets thrown away. Off the map. Donezo. And I'll go ahead and put him here in Black Beach. Perfect. All right. Now, we're done with your organization phase. We've done all the units we want to, or we're able to, because for every one you want to put on the map, obviously you have to have another one that you will then remove from play. Now, you go to the end phase. You look for the automatic victory, which mainly what I talked about, remember, was if the U.S. has enough victory points, has the same victory points as the turns. If you do that, you're good. Now you go ahead, just like you would in most games, right, during an end phase or like kind of a refresh thing. You go ahead and you flip over, any units that are spent, you flip them over to their fresh side. The impulse marker gets moved up to the 1. Turn track gets moved to the next turn, and it gets flipped to the day side. American bombardment markers. So when we used our bombardment marker, we went ahead and put it back in its spot it was used. Well, obviously, it's good now, so go ahead and put it back. And that counts for the naval one and both air ones as well. So you always have access to the 3 bombardment markers at the start of every turn. If there's no automatic victory, go ahead and move on to the next turn. So now we'll go ahead and do that reinforcement phase. Again, normally this comes first every turn except turn 1. That's why I didn't cover it yet. So say we're on turn 2, now we do the reinforcement phase. Now here's where all those cool S units that we were looking at, right? All those cool, pillbox with an S, Japanese pillbox, the mobile artillery, or the tank unit. Now we can start trying to get them on the board. When it comes to the S units, it's actually super simple. You go ahead and you make a die roll with 2 dice for each side. Add it up, have it, and then fractions are rounded up. So for instance, the Japanese, they rolled 5, have that to 2.5, round fractions up to 3. So they can go ahead and add 3 units back. The pillbox units, so like this one, say that was one of the 3 they had, or they may not have 3. Maybe they can do 3, but they only have 2 that have been eliminated. All right. So say one of them was a pillbox, and one of them was this machine gun, is their other S unit. The pillbox, they go ahead, they have to put that on the board. You can't hide the pillbox in a Japanese hidden units box, so that way they'd have to put it on the board. But then the machine gun, they could either put that on the board, or actually, no, I'm sorry, the machine gun units are placed in hidden unit boxes automatically. So, and same thing for the Americans. So we rolled a 4 divided by 2, that's 2. So we go ahead and 2 units, and there's no value on the units. It's just any 2 units. So we might say, all right, well, I'm definitely going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and grab this tank and this mobile artillery. Put both of them on the board. I can place them in any numbered area that is American controlled. So that is how the reorganization, the end phase, and the reinforcement phase work. All right, before we ended the video, I did want to cover the invasion boxes. This is basically kind of the first turn, couple turns of the game. The United States, the American forces are really going to want to get their forces on the map itself, right? So they have the airborne invasion, which is down in the bottom left over here. We're going to focus on the seaborne invasion box. The only difference is in the airborne invasion box, obviously they land in a different area. Top side here, area 10, which it does say at the bottom of the box. Just like here in the seaborne invasion box, you can see it says units move from the seaborne invasion box to area 22, Black Beach right here. And then when you do land the very first impulse of the game, so then the first turns a day, first American impulse, and they get it for free basically. They don't have to roll for it. You have to do the airborne invasion, and you do 7 units at the same time. It's like a first wave. After that, and I've seen a little confusion online, so that first invasion has to be airborne landing, and it's going to be 7 units at once. You're going to roll for all 7 of them on the little table here, and figure out how they land. Do they land spent, fresh, or are they eliminated? So Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Seaborne Invasion box. So say we already did our first impulse. We landed our 7 units over on top side. You know, we went ahead and we got them all over here. They're all chilling. A couple of them landed, spent, and one, unfortunately, he only rolled a 1, so he was eliminated. Actually, they wouldn't be eliminated because in the first turn you get a +1. So never mind. Everyone's fine. Everyone's chilling. A couple guys are spent. No big deal here. Now, it's a second impulse. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to roll to see if we get momentum. We're going to go ahead and assume, just pretend we rolled a 4 here, so we maintain momentum. So for our second impulse, we're going to activate the Seaborne Invasion box. Now, super simple. There's a Seaborne landing table. You go ahead and look on that, and it mentions that if you roll, if there is a fresh Japanese machine gun unit adjacent, so any of these areas here, you give it a -1 to your roll. Other than that, you go ahead and just roll. Very simple. So go ahead, say we roll a 4, you pick your unit first, so that way you're not cheating. So say you're like this guy, this infantry. All right, I'm gonna land him. Roll a 4, 3 to 6, and we have no modifiers right now, and there's no modifiers on the first turn. Again, the only modifier would be if there was a Japanese fresh machine gun nearby. We rolled a 4, he was area 22 and remains fresh. Perfect. Say we're gonna send this infantry. All right, another infantry. Oh, we only roll a 1. Okay. He moves area 22. He's flip spent, though. So he still lands, but he is spent. That's a bummer, so not going to be able to use him again for much of anything. Now, let's say it was the tank. And we're up. Let's land that tank, baby. All right, now we roll a 5. Okay. Lands fresh. No big deal, right? Well, the only downside, and because he's an S unit, remember he has that S in the top right, say we rolled that 1. Okay. Unit moves to area 22 and is flip spent. Oh, there's a little asterisk. Uh-oh. S unit is eliminated. Oh, no. So, gets bogged down, whatever. Not able to survive. Go ahead and place him in the eliminated box. So that's one of the just sort of the dangers of landing. You never know what exactly is going to happen during the invasion, either seaborne invasion or airborne invasion boxes when you're trying to land your troops. There are possibilities that they're going to arrive fresh, might arrive spent, or they might just be eliminated. Alright everyone, so that was my overview and tutorial for Return to the Rock, Corregidor, 1945. Hopefully that explained the game well enough for you guys to get an interest. Decide, are you interested in it? Hopefully you are, because I think it's a lot of fun. I think it does work really well solitaire, especially because of that impulse system. I heard I read a comment, someone mentioned they thought it was kind of chess-like, the way the game worked, and sometimes it is, and so I could see where, face-to-face would be a lot more fun in that way. However, when I play, because of the impulse, I'm always thinking, okay, as Americans, how far can I push? How far can I push? Oh, and then it switches over to the Japanese. And then the Japanese, I kind of put myself in their mindset of, okay, what am I going to do based on what the Americans have done? Are they focusing on, they're building up at Black Beach? Well, odds are, I bet they're going to try to take Malinta Hill because that's 3 victory points. Or maybe they're building up the top side. They're landing as many soldiers as they can over here. Oh, they're starting moving to the barracks. They might move to the hospital next. You look at those different things as you're playing, and I think it works really well for solitaire because it is that impulse system. Again, hopefully this taught you the game in a way that will help you learn it as well. So say you've already decided, yep, I want to own this game, I'm going to buy it, or maybe I convince you, you pick it up, you buy it, you watch the video a couple times, you say, all right, that makes sense. Hopefully this gives you a good idea how to get started. Yeah, you're still going to have to read the rulebook, you're still going to have to reference the rulebook, but hopefully this gives you a good overview of the game and really helps you out. So, all right, I appreciate any comments. Please, if you're not subscribed, I noticed that the majority of people who watch my videos are not subscribed. If you like my content, subscriptions help. They just kind of show me that people are interested. Also, comments. Let me know what you think, what you like, didn't like, any games you want to see. I'll be sure to do that. But in closing, thank you, Revolution Games, for providing a copy of this game for me to conduct this tutorial over. Thank you, Michael Rinella, for a great game and for helping me out with some questions I've had. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, later.